Did I forget the breath today? Because I need to breathe. Let's breathe in deeply. Let us breathe out. Let us breathe in. Let us breathe out. Let us breathe in. Let us breathe out. Thank you. When Lori and I lived in Bozeman, Montana, we lived about an hour and 15 minutes from the north entrance to Yellowstone Park, which in Montana is, considered close. I had read that you could hear and often see the wolves that had been reintroduced to the park in the Lamar Valley. So the first time we went to the park, we parked ourselves in a vehicle pullout in Lamar Valley, and I waited. And I was like, so where are the wolves? I'm not seeing or hearing anything. And Lori said, helpfully, we just need to sit and wait. I was like, just sit and wait? Here? I would learn two important lessons from our years visiting the park. The first is to look for movement across the vast open landscapes. Movement meant critters. And the second was to find a place, park ourselves, wait, be still for what seemed like an eternity, and simply see what made itself present to us. Now, this attention that I developed was not a hypervigilance, a strain from desperately over-focusing or scanning with binoculars to find something. It was rather a full arrival in a place, not so much looking as it was just seeing what was, paying attention, noticing. A sound might redirect one's gaze, as would movement. In her book, An Altar in the World, Barbara Brown Taylor describes a practice of attention that leads to a sense of reverence. She writes, "The easiest practice of reverence is to sit down somewhere outside and pay attention for at least 20 minutes, kind of the length of a sermon. Pay attention to everything that lives within that small estate. With any luck, you will soon begin to see the souls in pebbles, ants, small mounds of moss, and the acorn on its way to becoming an oak tree." A former youth group member was in a creative writing class in high school, and the assignment for the year was that each one of them was to find a place outside and visit it often, to spend time with it, to inhabit it over the course of the year. They were to be present in that place, to observe, record, experience it in as many ways as possible. And at the end of the year, their writings about their place was published in an anthology simply called My Place. Those students developed a capacity for attention. And for them, it became a discipline. Visiting a place over the months of the year and in the changing seasons can be a wonderful practice of attention, of mindfulness, of gratitude. And my friends, we live in the perfect place to try that. Our ability to pay attention, to focus on something, is actually limited. If you average 8 hours of sleep, that leaves 960 minutes of each day that your attention is being vied for. Now, Microsoft claims that the average adult attention span is 8 seconds. And that most adults can sustain attention on a task for maybe 20 minutes. Again, may I reference the sermon, 20 minutes. So what we choose to focus on, to pay attention to, is important. An article I read concluded that what you focus on creates your experience. And choosing those targets wisely is the key to a good life. In short, your life, who you are, what you think, feel, and do, what you love, is the sum of what you focus on. We can give our attention to anything, and there is plenty for us to give our attention to. It almost summons us. A marketing website states that, quote, each minute that ticks by, get this, results in 204 million emails, 16 million text messages, 350,000 new tweets. I know where a lot of those are coming from. Every 60 seconds, 86,805 hours of video are streamed by Netflix subscribers. The list goes on, amounting to streams of content and communication that cause us to unlock our smartphones 8 to 110 times a day. Our daily lives, my friends, are a string of interruptions. To pay attention, to focus, then, in this time in human existence is countercultural. Ironically, we are trying, in an effort to keep up, to train our brains not for attention and focus, but for interruptions. Now listen to this. In 2012, Disney executives brought a psychologist and a cultural anthropologist down to Florida to observe which features of the theme parks and hotels most captured infant and toddlers' attention. Amid all the sensory stimulation, the lights, the rides, the costume characters, the snacks, and the toys, they walked away with the surprising revelation. The children were most enthralled with their parents' cell phones. There was nothing at Disney that could compete. Even more surprising, the phones were only so interesting to children because they held their parents' attention, the one thing that children crave the most. My conclusion? Well, it's actually a radical act to put away the phones, the tablets, the watches, to turn off the radios, the computers, the TVs, and the Alexas of the world. Because what we obviously crave is not only attention, but the connection that comes with attention. Real conversation in real time. Children don't need Disneyland or TV. They need attention and relationship, connection with and care from their parents. And then there are those times when we confuse attention with what is really distraction. On one of our trips to Yellowstone, we pulled over because there were a bunch of other cars pulled over. Tip for visiting Yellowstone. If you see a car or cars pulled over, pull over. There is most likely something to be seen. And in this case, it was a yellow-rumped warbler. It was pretty cool. Anyway, these birds weigh less than half an ounce, and they're maybe 5 inches in length. In other words, they aren't large by any stretch of the imagination. As we were observing the bird, a man walked by us with a camera and a lens the size of one of those orange traffic cones. He was beaming, and he said with exuberance that I thought was best saved maybe for sighting a wolf pack, "I got it." And I looked at his lens, and I looked at that little warbler, and I thought to myself, I should hope so. I mean, in his efforts to capture the warbler, to get his picture, did he even see it? But we know he got it. So there's a publication called The Sun. Some of you may subscribe to it. They have a section every week, every month, which I go to. They pick a theme, and then they ask the readers, it's called Reader's Right, to send in their reflections. And this one is from their August 2011 issue, and the word that was given to readers was attention. I've been in the garden for an hour now, sitting on a bench or crouched behind the Indian grass and Boltonia, which is a fancy word for asters. My camera slung around my neck, 300 millimeter zoom fully extended and ready. I take picture after picture, hoping to get just one good image of the two monarch butterflies that flit around me. But the majority of the photos are a square of blue or a white haze. The best I can get is an orange blur in the bottom right corner. The monarchs twist and slide across the sky in double helix patterns like leaves caught in an updraft. Where'd they go? Well, there they are on the other side of the garden. I give up until after dinner. But when I return, I am clumsy and lumbering, my finger on the shutter too slow. I set the camera down beside me on the bench and burn this moment into my brain. The warm air smelling of mint, the sun on my back, the summer flowers in full bloom and about to go to seed. The monarchs come closer, then land beside me. Sometimes we're so fixated, so intent on something that the fixation and the intent actually interfere with our ability to be present, to pay attention. And that if we just showed up without expectation, but open, attentive, we are greeted with the unexpected or more than we hope for. A caution. There's a difference between attention and obsession. Attention is truly seeing, focusing on something or someone or an object, being present with them in the moment. Obsession is that overfocus that actually obscures the true nature of something or someone. Boundaries disappear, and the person or thing falls prey to projection. Obsession distorts. It consumes. Rather than bring a person or a thing into focus, it skews perception. It takes over. A friend of mine finally forbid her husband from listening to Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Why? Because what she reported, stories that you're not going to hear on NPR, were so inflammatory to anyone who cares about democracy or the planet, sent him into a constant state of outrage. Now me, I can't stand the fact that she constantly interrupts the people she's interviewing. But you want to be able to be here now and not become so angry you can't do anything, or you become paralyzed, and again, you can't do anything. Sometimes the most radical act, the best way we can pay attention is to turn off that radio. Stop reading. Stop watching TV with its constant stream of both information and, in some cases, disinformation. Now, there's a connection between attention, gratitude, and reverence. Attention can evoke the feeling of gratitude or reverence. Sarah and I were headed to a ministerial gathering last Sunday, and I had built in some time for us to do a bit of rock hounding. A few hours into our hounding, after we had moved to a different section of the creek, I heard Sarah give out a loud gasp. I called back, "Did you find something?" "Yeah." "An agate?" "Yes." She was both thrilled and surprised, actually quite awestruck. I smiled. I was happy for her, and to be honest, a bit jealous. I had walked over that same section of creek just moments before Sarah. And in my hurry, or inattention, I had missed that treasure. I was all about covering as much ground as possible to increase my options and possibilities. Sarah was meandering along, focusing on what was right in front of her, with no need to forge on. I get quite religious when rock hounding. I love rocks so much that when I find one that is beautiful to me, I find myself praising God. Now, I'm not sure I even know anymore what the word God means. I just don't. And even if I did, I'm not sure that God language is my particular language. But that said, it just pours forth out of me in these situations. And I'm told actually when I play dominoes that I get the same way. Now, in Domino's, my response is not about reverence and gratitude, but when I am rockhounding and I come upon an agate, my response is one of gratitude and reverence. And my old training in the Christian church just comes out. And I find myself thinking something. The family and marriage therapist David C. Burns defines it this way: to give one's full attention is to look closely, to linger upon, to delve, to immerse oneself in something that at first seems other, but soon seems one with. To give attention in the end is to be grasped. I love that phrase. It's such a great phrase, to be grasped. To give attention is not only to give something to another person, space, or place, but it is in turn to be taken in by that object of the attention, to connect deeply. This summer at our family reunion, I was trying to grab a bit of alone time in the midst of nearly 30 people. And I was sitting on a couch with my iPad doing a paint-by-number app. It's about the extent of my artistry. I became aware that there was the presence of a 9-year-old a bit behind and next to me, and then of a 9-year-old finger reaching out in front of me just inches from my screen, followed by a 9-year-old's advice about what to do next. Then a 4-year-old was on the armrest of the couch behind me, leaning on and over me. She was joined by her 8-year-old brother, who was squeezing in between his sister and his 9-year-old cousin. The screen was a magnet for them. It wasn't me. They couldn't help themselves. And me, I was about to lose it. I felt so hemmed in and so intruded upon. And of course, it was my fault. In our culture, children's attention is now totally diverted toward any screen, which this quote from another psychologist, as I reflected upon this incident, really rang true. It says, your attention is like a combination spotlight and vacuum cleaner. It highlights what it lands on, and then it sucks it into your brain, for better or worse. To be clear, this was not a moment of deep connection and relationship. It was actually a disconnection, mine and theirs. This was a reminder yet again that we can give our attention to anything and focus on it. So we need to be really clear and intentional about what it is we really want to be paying attention to in our lives. There's a wonderful Northwest poet, some of you may know him, David White. He lives up on Bainbridge. And he has a book that came out recently where he takes a word and he just does a beautiful job of defining it. And this is how he defines gratitude. He says, gratitude is not a passive response to something we have been given. Gratitude arises from paying attention, from being awake in the presence of everything that lives within and without us. Soon, many, but not all of you, will probably be gathered at tables with family and friends to celebrate Thanksgiving. Regardless of the debunking of the myth of the first Thanksgiving, it has remained an important day of connection in our culture. And it has become common practice around many tables to have people go around and say what they are thankful for, to name the gratitudes in their lives. It's a lovely practice, a practice that does not have to be relegated to one day a year. A daily gratitude is like taking an inventory, being conscious of and paying attention to one's life, the events, the people, the places that are in it. That attention is an awakening of sorts, an awakening that awakens gratitude, Thanksgiving. So if that's not the practice where you gather for Thanksgiving, see if you can add that this year. See if it can become a daily practice. It's kind of like the more you do it, the more you do it. The more you are attentive, the more you become aware of, the more gratitude wells up in you, and sometimes the more gratitude you have, reverence enters the picture. Now, I realize that reverence can be kind of a scary word because colloquially, how do you say that word? Colloquially? Colloquially. Thank you. It can imply revering a deity. Now, what if a deity isn't part of your religious practice? Does that mean you don't have the quality of reverence in your life? Again, Barbara Brown Taylor. Reverence is the recognition of something greater than the self, something that is beyond human creation or control, that transcends full human understanding. God certainly meets that criteria. Amen. But so do birth, death, sex, nature, truth, justice, wisdom. It is not just the magnificence of nature that summons the response of reverence or awe. It is also the discoveries of science, appreciation of the creativity that is finding itself in the expression and the mediums of all of the arts. And finally, I would say this about attention. It is a rare thing these days to be the recipient of someone's full attention, to be seen, heard, witnessed. I know that multitasking has become a way of life, and I know that it's a necessity for many. But that marketing firm that I referenced earlier says this about that. We don't suffer from a depletion of attention so much as a shift in the number of things we're trying to focus on at any given time. What if we shifted the number of things we allowed ourselves to focus on, to pay attention to? What if we freed ourselves up from our multitasking and whatever it is that diverts us at any given moment from offering our full attention to that person or persons that are right in front of us in that moment? You know, I was told by someone who met Bill Clinton that he had the ability to go down a line and make the person he was greeting feel like they were the only person in the world. And that's a gift. But I think it's one that can be learned, it can be practiced, it can be exercised, and it can be offered. So here's what I want to leave you with. What is it that you want to give your time, your energy, your attention, and all its facets to? What do you choose to give your life to? What elicits gratitude in your life? What is it that awakens reverence in you? And finally, as the poet Mary Oliver poses, what will you do with your one wild and precious life?